The week we bought this house here in rural Spain, everything started going wrong. One of our cars was vandalised. We had a huge cockroach infestation. We even had to move out of this house. And in the same week that we completed on this property, I was made redundant. Now, if you saw the video where everything seemed to fall apart, you'll know that this move didn't exactly start smoothly. But what you didn't see in that video was what happened next, because the real story wasn't just what went wrong. The real story is why we ended up staying. Okay, let me explain something first. Nothing dramatic went wrong with the house itself here, this one that we bought. There was no nightmare builders, no legal disasters, and no renovation horror stories. And in actual fact, the renovation stayed perfectly within budget. So the problem wasn't this property, the problem was the timing. For 10 years, we've been renting an apartment close to where I was working, and we'd reached a point where we just didn't want to keep paying for somebody else's future. It started to feel like we was funding our landlord's life instead of our own. And at the same time, I was having these thoughts. Property prices on the coast, on the Costa del Sol, had risen hugely. So we started to look inland, more rural, more affordable, and certainly less financial pressure. And honestly, that part of our decision-making process was right. We got that spot on, because just imagine losing your job with a massive mortgage attached at the same time. That would have been a very different conversation. But even without that mortgage, losing my job the same week that we bought this house kind of shook everything, because we hadn't bought this house as a project. We bought it as a stepping stone to our retirement. And then suddenly, overnight almost, the plan disappeared. Now, in this video, you would have seen the surface problems, the vandalism, the infestation, the shock. But what you didn't see was the conversation that come after. And I remember that conversation that evening very well. We started to discuss the options that were in front of us. Do we sell the house as it is? Do we try to get out? Do we accept that maybe we've made a mistake? And I also remember my wife wanting to quit a lot more than I did. And I understood that. I understood her reasons. You know, we'd just moved to a rural village. We didn't know anyone. The car had been vandalised. We had the cockroaches. And then the big problem to top it all off was I'd lost my job of 10 years. So it kind of felt as if the universe was sending us signals. And we did even talk about leaving the property completely, you know, and that was something that we spoke about and discussed several times. Not going back to the UK. I've been in Spain for 20 years and I love it here, but maybe just relocating to another property that we own up further up the coast. So to a degree, I suppose we felt a little bit trapped because we had committed financially, but at the same time, all of these thoughts and conversations were going on. I remember I felt something else, and that was excitement. And that surprised me because for years, my life had been structured around routine, I suppose. You know, work dictated where we live, work dictated decisions, work dictated timelines. And suddenly, all of a sudden, that structure was gone. And it was uncomfortable to a degree, but at the same time, it was also a feeling of openness. And for the first time in years, we weren't following a plan. We were sort of staring at a blank page. Now, in the end, the decision to stay here wasn't dramatic. It was logical because selling the house as it was would have meant taking a guaranteed loss. But by reforming it, it gave us a chance to properly increase its value and to create new options. Now, when we bought it, the original plan was to reform the property slowly, little by little. But when that redundancy came, it changed how I thought. I thought, what if we use that money now? What if we get the house all complete in one go? Once it's complete, we can then decide what we want to do, if we want to stay or if we want to sell. And the other way that my mind was working was that if we got the house done and it's all complete, we're then able to decide from a position of strength and not fear. And that changed everything. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about rural life here in Spain, because me and my wife we're city people. And the kind of quiet that you feel here is different. You know, there were and maybe there still are occasionally moments of isolation. And even though I speak the language, you know, I've been in Spain a long time, more than 2 decades, simply moving away from everything that is familiar is maybe hard in itself. I think generally as a human being, we don't realise how much comfort comes from knowing your surroundings, from your routine, the familiarity. And in the beginning, the silence here felt loud, like really loud. But then I suppose things started to change. Each week that's passed since we bought it, we feel a lot more comfortable, and conversations with neighbours and simple interactions that we have. So what first felt like complete isolation now feels more like space. And what I mean by that is space to think, space to breathe, and space to decide what we actually want to do next. What I think is interesting about this whole experience is that it's changed me more than I expected, and in different ways, because losing my job, the thing that caused all the worry, has actually given me back control. And for years, my life was structured around obligation. You work, you plan around your work, you move around your work. Whereas now, I make decisions based on what I want to do and not on what I have to do. And I also think as well, it's made me calmer. Even though my wife will probably question that, I think it's made me calmer, and it's certainly made me more patient. Another thing as well that I've noticed is that it's changed my mindset on what success is, because I think before success meant stability and security, whereas now for me success is freedom to choose, freedom to adapt, and freedom to take a gamble and back yourself. So do I regret it? Do I regret buying this property? Well, if I'm being honest, yes and no. I'd say more leaning strongly towards a no, but there's a little bit of a yes in that. I regret that we bought the house just days before I lost my job. And the reason I say that is because if the redundancy had come first, maybe we would have made a completely different decision. Maybe we would have took early retirement and moved to our other property further up the coast. But of course, that option disappeared the moment we signed for this house. And that is a hard thing to ignore. Am I 100% confident that we've made the right decision now? No, of course not. And the reason I say that is I don't think anyone ever can be. Life is a gamble, or should I say the decisions that you make in life are a gamble. And I think what people do, or certainly what I at least do, is I make my decisions as best as I can based on the information that I have at that time. And then once I've made that decision, I just adjust to it. But what I do know is this, that walking away from this would have been easy in the short term, but staying here has forced us to grow. Staying here has actually made me feel so much more like the decision was right. And for that alone, I don't regret staying here at all. If you haven't seen the first part of this story where everything seemed to go wrong, I'll link it below in the description box. Watch that video next, because it shows what we was dealing before this decision, the decision that we've made to stay, the decision that we've been discussing in this video. But I am curious to know, have you ever started something, maybe moved country or bought a house in a foreign country to renovate, or even just changed career, and then halfway through thought, what have I done? Because if you have, you're not alone. Doubt is normal, fear is normal, and I don't think the question is whether it's hard. The question is whether staying is a better long-term story than leaving. And we're still writing our story, but let me know in the comments yours, because I'd be really interested to know what you did. Have you committed to something and then everything completely changed? And if that was the case, did you double down, or did you choose to walk away? Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap up the video, but if you've enjoyed this, please remember to give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free. It won't cost you a penny, but it really helps this channel to continue to grow. Anyway, enjoy whatever you're doing for the rest of the day, and I'll catch you in the next one.